you're watching this, you just joined a SoulCycle studio, maybe you just got your white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and now you're up at 2 a.m. Googling, am I in a cult? You realize you've shelled out over $1,000 on something that was just once a hobby. Your instructor is starting to sound a little sus. Some of the rules are starting to sound arbitrary. Researchers have identified 8 characteristics that separate intense communities from dangerous groups. And when I personally tested my BJJ gym, it hit every single one. But so did some SoulCycle studios and some CrossFit gyms. Is there actually a difference between being cultish? I'm going to show you exactly how to tell the difference. We'll go through the 8 warning signs of dangerous groups, plus the 4 traits of truly malicious leaders. But the 8th red flag, it's the most dangerous one of them all. Understanding these red flags can help you recognize when it's time to get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. Red flag number 1. Mystical manipulation.
The leader of your studio is portrayed as kind of like your guru. Do you have their picture framed in your studio? Do you bow to them at the beginning of your lesson?
What?
So that is Dr. Goodfriend. She's an actual psychologist and studies this stuff for a living. And I sat down for a one-on-one conversation with her to discuss what cults actually are. You play basketball, right? So have you ever bowed to a picture of LeBron before a game? Or, I mean, hey, for you old heads out there, MJ. Dude, stop being weird. Okay, yeah, I figured I'd lose you on that one. So among the hobbies our wives and our girlfriends probably resent for the fact that they steal us away from them, this is probably and likely the first real distinction. SoulCycle, CrossFit, BJJ, they all kind of have instructors that lead the workouts. So mystical manipulation is actually kind of pretty common here as a red flag. Basketball, however, I mean, unless you're part of an organized team, you don't really have like someone leading the session. I think societally, we kind of have an unconscious sense of this too. It's kind of why people use the language of cult when it comes to SoulCycle, BJJ, or other, group workout classes. Like you could be addicted to your intramural basketball league.
What?
But no one's going to call it a cult. But yeah, that's also why my wife thinks my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu addiction is a cult. Wait, you're seriously comparing your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym to actual cults like Jonestown or the Moonies? That seems a little insensitive, but what if you went to like a basketball camp and it was run by, a former NBA player and he told you he had the secrets to get you into the NBA or get you a D1 scholarship, you just have to follow his training protocol, or he has some special secret training regimen. You can see here why there's potential for, manipulation to arise. A lot of jiu-jitsu gyms, looking at you, Gracie Baja, have a framed photo of either Carlos or Elio Gracie on the wall, and before and after each class, members are told they have to bow.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
To this instructor who's just some dead Brazilian dude. And if you've watched my last video, this dude didn't really have as important of a role as he self-proclaimed to have had in the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But, for another time. Anyways, these instructors aren't just teaching, they're treated as like some kind of wise figurehead guru who have very special knowledge that only they can impart on you. Okay, so we both agree basketballs aren't cults. But it sounds like you're saying basketball camps are cults? Okay, maybe. Researchers, specifically this guy, Robert J. Lifton, devised 8 warning signs or red flags that we can use to potentially key in on dangerous groups. And once they have your respect and reverence, they start controlling something even more important, your relationships. Millu Control.
Milieu is just like the French or Latin word for environment, and it's the idea that in a lot of cults, people are not allowed to have friendships or relationships with people who aren't in the group.
So much like your Korean ex-boyfriend who would scream at you when you came home an hour too late after girls' night.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
It's not accurate, okay? Okay, anyways, let's move back to the basketball analogy. Has a Lakers fan ever told you can't attend a Warriors game? What? No. Okay, or has like a fellow NBA fan ever told you can't go to a Dodgers game? Brother, what? So Millu Control refers to tactics to exert social pressure and exert control and stop information flow. Truthfully, it's not uncommon to hear of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gyms not allowing its members to quote-unquote cross-train, which is just going to another gym across town, or if you're visiting another city, training at another gym that isn't that gym that you pay membership to.
Because the idea is that you could potentially leave the group or realize that there are criticisms of your group if you're talking to people outside of your group. That tight control is absolutely a red flag of a cult.
There's even a term for it in Brazil. It's creonte, which is like Portuguese for traitor.
We use this word outside of Jiu-Jitsu. Let's say I'm calling my friend to do something, and he says he has other friends.
Divas. And now that they control who you talk to, next is getting you to confess everything about yourself. Cult of Confession.
The next one is called Cult of Confession.
Has anyone on the court or after a pickup game ever pressured you to confess your deepest, darkest feelings? Absolutely not.
In a lot of cults, you're required to confess all of your sins to the cult leader. They can use that to like blackmail you if you ever try to leave.
The most famous example of this is Scientology, which, guys, remember, categorically is not a cult. They have their famous e-meter auditing sessions where new members are told they have to purge themselves and ascend to the next level by confessing all their deepest secrets, all their deepest shame. They are told it is a way to ascend to the next level of Scientology. In practice, it gets used often as a form of emotional blackmail to control and subjugate the members.
You are not him. You are not him. No. You are not him.
No, I'm not him. I'm just him.
It's particularly weaponized against members who try to leave the cult not cult. It's honestly pretty natural in the jiu-jitsu community to kind of like share with their instructor things that have been struggling or things that have been keeping them off the mats, or maybe the traumatic reason for why they started jiu-jitsu in the first place. But you do have to look out for leaders who constantly press you for more and more personal information. And sometimes, not all the time, this personal information gets used as leverage, which is why our 8th flag is the most dangerous one. But before that, what happens when leadership starts demanding that you sacrifice your own well-being for the sake of the group? Doctrine over person. When you finish playing pickup, are you ever told you have to clean the courts for free? Nah. Kobe. Yeah, right? And I mean, if you did, it would be voluntary. If you didn't, it's not like you wouldn't be allowed to come back for the next time, right?
I saw this a lot when I was practicing martial arts. Doctrine over person is the idea that you should sacrifice your own priorities or your own health for the good of the group or the good of the doctrine.
In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we have submissions, right? Like if you are about to choke me out or break my arm, I'm allowed to tap before anything catastrophic happens. But if someone's about to break your foot, for some reason, tapping onto that is considered dishonorable.
Dishonor on your whole family.
And believe it or not, during one of the competition training days, we were told by an instructor to let our partner pop our foot.
Did I stutter?
The science behind all this was that we would build scar tissue and make it harder for our opponents in the future to intentionally pop our foots and make us more resilient to breaking our foot or tapping by footlock. What ended up happening is, I built up a lot of scar tissue and my right ankle just looks like a grapefruit when standing next to my left foot.
So, I look amazing.
I'm probably gonna have a lot of arthritis in this ankle when I'm like 40. Honorable means of victory over the actual physical well-being of like the actual competitors. Yeah, that's doctrine over person. Look, you might say to yourself, if someone ever told you that, you would get up and leave. But as Montell puts it, human beings generally feel losses of time, money, pride, etc. much more acutely than gains, which is to say that it's a very human feeling to not want to take on the shame of letting the group down or quitting this hobby that you've already spent, thousands of dollars on. Truthfully, walking away can sometimes feel like losing everything. But that's just one example of putting what the group values over the individual. Oftentimes, these groups don't even have an objective standard of values, which leads us to demand for purity. Yo, that is creepy. What the heck is demand for purity?
Demand for purity is the idea that people in the group are given increasingly strict, increasingly impossible standards for their behavior.
It's not about being pure in the sense of Virgin Mary. I mean, it could be, but it's more about having arbitrary standards of excellence or what the in-group deems as like worthy or great. Truthfully, in Jiu-Jitsu, we do have a standard of excellence, which we call our belt system. It goes from white to black. But you might think, a black belt is better than the white belt. I mean, objectively and usually so, but to be honest, it's not really objective and it's not really skill-based. I've seen people get stuck at one of the middle belts for years, and it's not because they weren't good at jiu-jitsu. I mean, some of them are great. Some of them are even world champions. It's just kind of like the instructor doesn't f with them anymore, and it's a vibe thing.
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
And you can see why this might be a red flag in groups. I mean, SoulCycle has like that whole front row thing. I saw this thread on Reddit and people were arguing about who deserves to sit in the front row and who doesn't. I didn't realize that sitting in the front row is such a high-class opportunity for stationary biking.
I got kicked out of Scientology because I was too lazy. Let's ride.
And speaking of being special, what happens when your BJJ gym thinks they've discovered the ultimate truth of fighting and everyone else is just playing around? Sacred science. Do you have a favorite team?
Sacred science is the idea that your group's doctrine is the only one that is correct. Your group is promoted as being special, and you're taught to kind of degrade any other groups, right? So like
Lakers
is the best, right? And everyone else is kind of a joke.
So if your boyfriend recently started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if he's a fan of Joe Rogan or the UFC, you'll often hear religious dogma that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the most essential martial art, that it's the most important martial art for self-defense or real fight.
The average person doesn't know how helpless they are until a jiu-jitsu black belt grabs a hold of you.
Look, I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 8 years, and I'm 150 pounds soaking wet. I'm not trying to get into a fight. I don't think my special lying on the ground techniques are going to serve me in an altercation. Nice. Especially if I'm going against someone even a little bit bigger than me.
You have a lot to learn about this town, sweetie.
I mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu alone has weight classes.
Shut up about this. Shut up about this.
But all of this specialness, it starts from somewhere. Usually, it's a special language that helps define an us versus a them. Loading the language. When you play basketball, do you ever use very specific niche terminology? Crossovers, pick and roll, full court press. Right. Yeah, that's called loading the language. Dagger, DHO, horns, X out, ice.
Loading the language is basically any group that has special terms or words that are jargon.
Look, Jiu-Jitsu has the same thing. If I said something like, we started the match in double pull, but he sat first, so I had to come up and pass, but he stalled me out in spider lasso, chances are you have no clue what I just said. Brother, what?
Only other martial artists really know what you're talking about when you use those words.
Montell says, creating special language to influence people's behavior and beliefs is so effective in part simply because speech is the first thing we're willing to change about ourselves and also the last thing we let go. So specialized language is automatically bad? Okay, look, not at all. It's totally normal to have your own special language. Like I said, Jiu-Jitsu has it, basketball has it, heck, knitting probably has it. Dude, honestly, none of these sound like that bad. Look, truthfully, none of these red flags so far are really that bad in isolation. It's, like I said, these are just warning signs that a dangerous group might be present. And honestly, most martial arts dojos, most intense communities share these traits.
There are a lot of groups that have these cult criteria. A traditional college campus is sort of culty.
You kind of lost me. College is a cult? You're saying college is a cult. Yeah, according to this criteria, kind of. You know, special language, traditions, unpaid internships, wearing branded paraphernalia, they all kind of make colleges culty. But, you know, colleges generally aren't trying to manipulate or hurt its student body. And before we get to the most dangerous red flag of all, we need to talk about something special. Okay, I hear you. I'm going to completely avoid group fitness classes like Jiu-Jitsu or SoulCycle, CrossFit, berries. But dude, honestly, I never intended to sign up for any of those classes anyways. Like, who falls for this kind of stuff? Yeah, everyone asked that question, and I'm pretty sure what you're picturing is probably some loser, some on the outskirts. The biggest myth is that cult members or cult victims are weak, broke, losers.
You are disgusting. You'll never find love.
But that's honestly completely backwards.
People who join cults are lied to and manipulated. It's kind of like blaming people who are in domestic violence situations. And we say, well, why don't you just leave? Or how could you be so gullible? It's never the victim's fault.
Cults or cultish groups specifically target high performers. I mean, think about it. SoulCycle is $40 a ride. CrossFit and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are like $200 a month on average. And if you want to get your certification in CrossFit, those classes are like thousands of dollars. I mean, Lord knows how much I spent on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu between the monthly membership fees, the tournament fees, the travel fees, medical bills. Look, these dangerous groups and businesses both target people with money and certain personality traits. We're looking at goal-oriented people, high performers, successful people, but also people who are looking for a little bit more meaning.
These aren't stupid people. These aren't gullible people. These are good people, but they're manipulated over time.
The most prototypical thing about these cult members is that they see the best in people. So when they're sold promises of self-improvement and fitness, they believe it. And I mean, why wouldn't they? Modern professional life creates the perfect storm. Successful people who are professionally accomplished and have a lot of disposable income, but are socially starved. Plus, there's the biochemistry of it all. You've probably heard that working out releases endorphins, but did you know that working out in groups releases oxytocin as well? Researchers have shown that group workouts reduce stress 26% more than individual workouts. So you're literally getting high together.
Sometimes a guy's got to ride the bull.
Look, add goal achievement and powerful belonging, and you get a very powerful psychological cocktail. Okay, but Why specifically these group fitness classes? Honestly, dude, you should just come join me and play pickup, because basketball or regular gyms don't offer optimal distinctiveness.
What?
Every human has two basic motivations. One motivation is that you want to be a part of an accepted community. The other motivation is that you want to be seen as a unique individual. So being a part of an elite group is the perfect combination of those two motivations.
So just like my mom, who would beat me when I didn't make the honor roll, humans love being part of exclusive groups. For my mom, it was the "my son is a doctor" group. Unfortunately for us both, I'm not. Lots of jiu-jitsu gyms have competition teams, which further distinguishes the optimal distinctiveness. Yo, did your mom really hit you?
If you put the frog in the pot of boiling water at the beginning, it hops out and it saves itself. But if you put the frog in the pot of cold water and you slowly turn up the heat, the frog doesn't realize what's happening to it and boils to death.
Look, you start with fitness or self-defense or looking for community, and slowly but surely your identity starts to shift. First, it's your hobby, then it's your main social group, and then it becomes the primary way in which you identify yourself. Dude, when I was a software engineer in New York and a white belt in jiu-jitsu, if someone asked me what my job was, I wouldn't tell them software engineer. I would say I'm a jiu-jitsu athlete.
So that was a f***ing lie.
If you're thinking, I would never fall for that, you're exactly the type of person who would. Confidence and optimism, they're not defense tactics, they're vulnerabilities that skilled manipulators know how to exploit. Montell says, in this way, it's not desperation or mental illness that consistently suckers people into exploitative groups. Instead, it's an overabundance of optimism. Look, to be clear, optimal distinctiveness and getting high in group workout classes, there's nothing objectively wrong with them, especially individually. What's wrong is when people in leadership positions use these things to exploit you. Yo, I'm really concerned your BJJ gym is like an actual cult.
The problem is there is no official definition or agreed upon idea of what a cult is.
I want to take this chance to thank my patrons and my YouTube members. Shout out to Robin Huang and Alex Dow, and shout out to my YouTube members, Stephen Rowland, John Sanko. I know one of you joined just to watch the interview and then left. I don't care. I still appreciate you joining at all. You can check out my full interview with Professor Win Goodfriend on my Patreon or my YouTube members page. Much of the research done for this video was gathered from the book Cultish by Amanda Montell, a link for which can be found in the description below. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel.
There isn't a dichotomy of this is or is not a cult. Anyone who's not in the group could, as an outsider, say that's a cult because I'm not in it or I don't like it.
Brother, did you really just write a 20-minute video to say because everything's a cult, nothing's a cult? I mean, dude, if you say cult and I say cult, you and I both know what we're talking about here.
Daddy, chill.
Look, here's a list of words that don't match their official academic definition. Okay? Literally doesn't mean literally. Okay? I don't know if you're triggered, but triggered also doesn't mean triggered. Narcissism, that gets thrown around a lot. Trauma, I'm about to give you a little bit of trauma with this. And gaslighting, dude, I feel like you're gaslighting me with this whole cult, no cult bullshit. Okay, yeah, fair point. You said you know what I mean, but I mean, do you really? Remember loading the language? One of Lifton's 8 red flags? I mean, I know it just sounds like semantics, but honestly, it matters because this whole conversation really is about language. What is a thought terminating cliche?
When you're in a group that's trying to control how you think, they will teach you phrases that have been taught to you by a priest or a teacher or a guru, and as soon as you start to question or doubt or think critically, you shut your own thinking down.
So yeah, language has power. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words might have you leaving your family and going to the middle of Central America, joining a commune. Because, you know, we throw around the word cult when it comes to BJJ or SoulCycle, CrossFit, but like, is basketball a cult? I mean, what's the difference there? Is it just a feel thing? The real question isn't, am I in a cult? Am I not in a cult? The question is, what kind of leader am I dealing with?
It really comes down to the person who's in charge. What are their rituals? What are their practices? And the motives of the people who are there.
And there are 4 warning signs of dangerous leaders. Warning sign number 1, narcissism. Hey, this is one of those words that you mentioned earlier where like the colloquial definition is far from the actual categorical definition. But no, seriously, we're not talking about that one guy who ghosted you. We're talking about actual narcissism, so stay away from narcissistic leaders.
Are you someone who constantly needs attention? Are you someone who believes that you are the smartest person, the most talented person. You believe that you deserve accolades.
I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
Warning flag number 2, unprocessed trauma. Oh, trauma. That's another word you mentioned earlier.
You want to make sure that the person who's in charge isn't re-traumatizing other people.
You are disgusting. You'll never find love.
Warning sign number 3, financial exploitation.
A lot of cults are basically just like pyramid schemes to make money. And there are all these hidden costs, right? And so it's really a money-making scheme.
Actually, that reminds me of the jiu-jitsu gym I joined in college, where they made me throw out 2 perfectly good gis because it didn't have their branded logo on it. They wouldn't even allow me to just buy the patch and slap it on the gi I owned. I had to specifically buy their $200 gi, which was only told to me after I had already signed a 6-month contract with them. Yeah, that was $200 I'm never gonna see again. Warning sign number 4 is sexual misconduct.
If they are basically grooming people to be their sex slaves, that's bad. Like, red flag. Sexual stuff is no good.
Look, if Catholic priests have taught us anything, it's that sex is bad and shameful. Yo, that's not a joke. A lot of people have been seriously essayed by the church. No, you're right. Actually, a story broke out 6 months ago about this jiu-jitsu professor in Brazil who was just outed by a bunch of kids he taught for having repeatedly essaying his students on the mats, many of whom are now black belt world champions in the sport.
That's actually the reason that I'm no longer involved in martial arts, because in my studio, the main instructor, who was not me, had sexual misconduct.
But dude, you said not to blame the victim, and here you are telling us all these warning signs and what to look out for. Like, if you're telling us not to blame the victim, if you're telling us we can't do anything about it, what was the point of this whole 20-minute video if these sick are just gonna go out and hurt people anyways?
The people who have the least power are the ones who are going to be the most manipulated. It's important for the people who have the most power to do something, right? Because the higher up you are in terms of rank, the more power and responsibility you have.
If you have rank or status in these communities, you have power. Insert, Spider-Man quote here. Okay, I actually couldn't afford the licensing for that clip, so, the gist, great power, great responsibility.
If you don't do something about it, you are now complicit. So if you're noticing problematic behaviors, it is absolutely your responsibility to do something about it. Even if you're not the one who's doing it, you're complicit if you notice.
Montell says one type of leader uses language, perhaps even unwittingly, to support frameworks that already exist. The other uses language, always deliberately, not to uphold the current order of things, but instead to swoop in and create something tyrannically new. Look, most fitness instructors or gym owners are trying to use existing systems to help people. It's the ones who are trying to leverage the system for personal power or exploitation that we really need to worry about. So now that you understand who's at risk, who the dangerous leaders are, and why all this matters, it's time to get into the 8th red flag, the most dangerous one of them all. This is the one that separates intense communities from truly dangerous ones. This is the one that gets people killed.
Dispensing of existence.
I've done shrooms before. I've experienced ego death. Yeah, I mean, close. This could mean ego death, and it kind of does, but this also means complete and utter lack of empathy for the outgroup.
If outsiders are dehumanized and you're taught that they are not worthy of being alive, and then you're basically groomed to physically harm them.
Less intense, have you heard those clips of Joe Rogan comparing himself or other jiu-jitsu practitioners as sharks or lions?
The average person doesn't know how helpless they are until a jiu-jitsu black belt grabs a hold of you.
Dude, cringe. Man is literally practicing rolling on the floor with another man in pajamas. And then the insinuation is that people who don't do so are sheep or prey.
You're a dead man.
Bruh. Truthfully, in actually dangerous groups, this dehumanization is kind of what gets people killed. It's what convinced the 39 people in Heaven's Gate to consider their bodies as just vessels and commit suicide. It's what Jim Jones used to convince 900 people that death was a preferable option than live in the same world as outsiders. Montell says, Father Divine said to always establish a we, they, and us, and an enemy on the outside.
There's too many people on this earth. We need a new plague.
Okay, so first, what's the real takeaway here? And second, seriously, get some help. First off, understanding these psychological patterns doesn't make you less vulnerable, clearly. Second, don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you're joining a group for the first time. Third, the ones who should speak up are truly the only ones who can. If you're a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or you sit at the front row of your SoulCycle studio, remember, it's your responsibility to help the newer members to navigate the community safely and calling out leadership when they are acting mad sus. Finally, guys, communities are good. Getting in shape is good. Doing both together, great. Your BJJ gym, SoulCycle studio, CrossFit box, they very well could exhibit multiple warning signs of cultish groups, but they could still be a positive force in your life. Don't let your paranoia of being in a cult stop you from doing something that you love in your life, especially if it's something that's good for you. Sometimes there are just bad people looking to do bad things to well-meaning groups. Montell says, I don't think the world would benefit from us all refusing to believe or participate in things. Too much wariness spoils the most enchanting parts of being human. And guys, stay tuned for the next video where we ask, are sports gay?